Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. The first item on our work session is the restoration of Big Six Bell. Ray, Secretary of Hagerstown Hose Company, First Hose Company.
Good afternoon.
Mayor Brucci, council members, good afternoon. My name is Ray Lushball, Secretary of the First Hagerstown Hose Company. I live at 331 Radcliffe Avenue in Hagerstown.
I'm Jerry Solom, the treasurer of First Hagerstown Hose Company, and working on the game well project.
Okay, if you'll recall, last October, we approached this body concerning the possible restoration of Big Six Bell, which is part of the game well fire alarm system, which sits atop this very room. And at that time, we just wanted permission to see if it was feasible to get the thing running again. And we told you it would cost the city nothing. Well, we're happy to report that it does not cost the city anything, and yes, it is working. What we would like to do at this time is ask permission to strike this bell. Let me give you a little background first. The thing had been rusted and seized up for about 49 years, and there was a chain but no weights. And Mr. Solm and President Stevens went to the museum, well, actually the Harrisburg Museum, and talked to a guy from the Hanover Museum, and wound up getting the necessary items that we needed to help make this bell function. So after many hours and about 12 cans of WD-40 and a little tapping with a ball peen hammer, it came about. So now what we would like to do is possibly ring this bell at 5:30 p.m. 3 times. Now, I say 5:30 p.m., and I found this out myself. Most of us realized it only rang at 1 o'clock when everybody would check the watches. Well, prior to the 1 o'clock, it rang at 5:30. Okay. And the reason they changed it is because if it rang at 5:30 and something happened to it, or prior to that, then the city employees would be on overtime. So they changed it to 1 o'clock so they wouldn't have the overtime occurred. So what we would have to do, we would have to mount an electronic computer programmed to the bell on the 5th floor.
It's been donated by where I retired from. TelPlus has donated equipment to ring it at no charge.
Right. And we would have to wind up the weights probably on a weekly basis. Now, these weights and a chain are on loan from the Hanover Museum, and if we are not allowed to ring this bell, then we have to return that property to them because it is on loan. But it is on loan as long as we are actively ringing this. So do you want to tell them to go ahead and strike it?
Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead, let it start the video.
So we have a video on the screen of the actual mechanism. This is the mechanism that makes the bell strike. Looks like an old washing machine mechanism.
It has plenty on. You have to crank it up. There's a crank that goes on there. There's a very large
Big
crank.
handle crank that goes on the side. At one time a day, before they stopped using it, there was an automatic winder on it, but that's no more. And we have a sister to this on display at our museum in South Potomac Street if you'd like to come in sometime and look at it. You notice the vents vibrating on that effect.
It's amazing that it works after setting for 49 years. And this will be the only working game well bell in the United States in a tower. There's no other ones working, mainly because they don't have the weights, they don't have the chain, they weren't able to get it working. So it might be a very big attraction in the city of Hagerstown as far as people come to see it.
And we would take care of the advertising, and we would ask the city if they have any type of brochures or anything like that, that they would include that in that. We'd also like to thank Mr. Dykey and some other city employees for being very gracious and allowing us to go up there and work on this. And we've had nothing but full cooperation from city staff.
We good?
That's fantastic.
5:30?
How many times does it ring?
3.
3 times. That's what they use to test the fire alarm every day. That is a 3 test with every day to make sure everything's working.
Okay.
When's the first night?
Well, we have
5:30.
some preliminary things to do. We have to get this hooked up. It's okay, Mr. Dykey, to get this hooked up there, and we have to get an electrician to do the work.
Okay,
So that may take a
And
week
we
or
had our
2.
cost.
Yeah, we're gonna pay for that, so we have to work with Mr. Dykey on getting that taken care of.
awesome.
And
If we
once
wanted to do something weird, like New Year's Eve and have it ring at midnight,
Well,
that
so
possible?
you could set it to strike anytime you want.
Yeah, well, I can program it to strike anytime you want, but on a daily basis, it's automatic, and it just ring 3 times at
Gotcha.
5:30. In fact, down the road, it might be, we could do something in the spring if you want, Fire Prevention Week. If we advertise, we could actually ring the bell several times every hour to get a big crowd up here. That's no problem at all. This might be a big tourist attraction. That's a possibility.
Yeah, good work.
thank you guys, appreciate it, appreciate all.
you.
So we got to
All
okay
your
with that
work.
then? We're good?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thank you very
Good.
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
all right, Maryland Symphony Orchestra presentation for 2020 General Fund Agency. Not here yet, running a little late, okay. We got the Ethics Board here, how about proposed revisions to the Hagerstown Code of Ethics?
Good afternoon, and thank you for being willing to meet with us this afternoon, and my apologies for July. I had a last-minute pastoral concern that I just had to take care of, so thank you for understanding for that. I've been on the Ethics Commission since the inception, and our experience has been that as we've lived with this document and this ordinance, that occasionally we find that there are areas that weren't as definitive or as clear as we had hoped. And so we revisit the language, and we've done this on several occasions, and ask for you to consider some changes to that language. There is no intent here to imply anyone has done anything wrong or anybody has gone against the intent of the ordinance. It's just our sense that these 2 changes would be helpful both to the commission in providing clarity to us and to you and others in the city who are affected by the ordinance to have clarity as well about what the intent will be. As the language stands now, it's pretty much up to the commission to define what a gift is. And as the commission members change over time, it will change with those members. It's not like it's set by precedent necessarily. So one concern is what this commission or the last commission decided is not necessarily what the next commission would decide if similar situations occurred. We had lengthy discussions about this and feel that we're not trying to be restrictive to you in any way about participating or taking part in activities or community things. We just feel that this is going to help us and you understand the parameters. In our discussions, myself and Rabbi Prost mentioned, as you see me today in collar, that's easy then for people to identify my role in the community and what my profession is. But I found that even when I don't wear this collar, the expectations of me are the same, with or without it. And as elected officials and other ranking officials in the city, the perception of others about activity and such is the same whether you're there as a elected official or not. You're still seen in that role. You cannot leave that at the door, is our sense of the matter. As I and the rabbi and others cannot leave their identity and their profession at the door saying, I'm not here as this or that. So it's for these reasons, we'd like to just have a dialogue with you. If you find the language needs to be changed or put in different ways, that's absolutely your right, and we're more than willing, those of us here, to dialogue with you about that. But we did feel that it's important enough to bring before you and ask you for your consideration. And I know you have concerns because I watched the video from July.
Well, my number one concern is, I understand what the desire is. And, whether I agree or disagree with the concept of, there's the Potter's Bowl dinner the other day. And so there was a silent auction for big trips. So I understand that this would make that unethical for us to do because we give money to the community free clinic. We don't do business with them, we just give them money. I often wondered whether it would preclude us from doing business with people that gave us money. But that's not my problem. Whether, like I say, I can disagree, I can agree, that always happens with things in life. My disagreement is the committee deciding to change definitions of words. A raffle is not a gift, and to define it as such is just inappropriate. I mean, make it a separate section. Make it a section entitled raffles, whatever you want to call it. But the definition in the dictionary of a gift is a thing given willingly to someone without payment, a present. When I buy a raffle ticket, nobody's giving me something willfully without a payment. It's not a present, it's not a gift. And to define a winning of a raffle ticket, MML, we're done. You go to MML and there's a 50-50. Well, now the members of the Hagerstown Council won't be able to buy those 50-50 tickets. And I heard somebody say, well, the answer to that is you just do what everybody does at MML. You just give them the money back. But that doesn't do anything because you still received it. You can't give it back unless you receive it. And we do business with MML. We invite them to have a dinner with us. Again, I'm not going to oppose the committee's decision that that's what you should do, but I would never agree to it if you're going to define a raffle as a gift, because I think that's not right.
So you're suggesting a item in there regarding raffles?
Correct.
And door prizes.
Door
such
prize,
things.
all those things, yes. A separate section that says this is what controls this.
And parameters?
I don't care whatever your parameters are.
Well,
My only
I
parameter
understand.
is I don't want to call it a gift, that's all.
I understand.
And let me add, I didn't say this before, I mean, we're not saying you cannot buy a raffle ticket or 50-50. We would suggest that then you donate that to a charity if you're,
But see, that to
call.
me is, now we'll play, well, this is ethics. That's what ethics is about.
I understand.
Okay?
I know.
Now, let me give you an example, just so we have an understanding. So I play a raffle and I win $500. So I give it to the community free clinic. Well, what do? I take a $500 deduction on my income taxes. I've just made X amount of dollars. What's ethical about that? So I refuse to buy into the fact, when we're talking ethics, that you can say you can win, it's okay to play and win as long as you don't keep the prize. Well, getting the prize to me is what it's all about. Giving away that prize, doesn't that give me goodwill to the community?
But it's-
I win $5,000 and I give it away and I get the newspaper article instead of getting a car, Emily gave the money away. Doesn't that give her a great deal of good for the community, and it's all about winning money?
But I think it really matters where that money comes from. Not necessarily, if we depend on, you're getting it from the free clinic, that's fine, but if you've got another recipient from another group that you have control over.
I got you, let me just, well, that's not in there, though.
I
That's not
understand.
in there, and let me ask you, Bill, because you've been here, when was the last time you played a raffle that it wasn't for a nonprofit? And can you please give me an example of a raffle or a bingo that I would go play over somebody that I controlled? Because every example I come up with is people we give money to. Every example, including bingo at fire halls, that this would preclude us from playing. And again, I'm not arguing that point, but that is my only issue. And like I said, I wouldn't oppose it, whether I agree with it or disagree with it, but I would oppose it if you count it in the term of gift.
Okay, that's fair. Just for my clarification, I understand your point about, okay, I play a raffle, I get a cash gift, I donate it to someone, I can still get a tax write-off. What if you bought a ticket and gave the ticket to the nonprofit and said, this is now I'm buying this on your behalf?
Well, then you could never get the prize, and I don't see how that would be a problem.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, well, for me, I think the easiest thing to do if we're going to clarify this specific item would be to keep the language, and instead it would state, gift excludes door prizes, raffle prizes, drawing prizes, and other similar awards of chance. And because I think that's what it is, you're not getting anything, you're buying a chance at something. There's no guarantee of any single thing, but it then clearly defines for the Ethics Commission, was this something that somebody acquired a chance at, equal to anybody else doing so or not? And I think it solves the issue, because I'm not going to stop participating, in that process, and be subjected to the complexities that comes out of every other scenario that you can think of, except for simply saying, this doesn't apply in this case because it meets this definition. I don't care if you want to write a different one, but I think it fits here where you say what it's not versus creating an entirely new definition of what it is, because I think trying to create what it is in a whole different definition is probably going to be a bit more complicated to do.
However, the commission's perspective is that there has to be that in there because they want,
But I think that defines it. If you say this is excluded,
but they want it included.
well, I get that, but I don't agree with that.
Right, I understand.
I oppose that notion. What I'm trying to do is to define it for you, because what you came in here saying is, hey, we have this issue, we're not really sure how to interpret it, can you assist us in interpreting it? I'm simply interpreting it in the manner that I believe it should be interpreted, as it applies to how I believe this code should and was intended to apply to officials in that position.
I don't want to overstate this, but I will say the sense of the commission is we do not believe it's appropriate to play games of chance and receive those cash or other prizes. So it isn't just, yes, part of the intent, and I stated that way, was to clarify for us. The other part is, at the present time, this commission is uneasy with any official playing a game of chance with an organization that you have influence over and receiving a reward for that, cash or
Let me ask
prize.
you one other
This is
question.
literally every event we attend
Well, that-
has
right.
some sort
Well-
of 50-50 or,
So another question I would ask, and Bill brought this up, is there also an appropriate way to define the definition of organizations that we do business with?
Right.
In addition, okay, because the organizations that we mainly are dealing with, one of the next groups up is the Maryland Symphony Orchestra.
Right.
Okay, and what happens when you buy a ticket to an event? And part of that ticket is a door prize.
Is it-
Now, you didn't even buy a door prize. You bought the ticket to the masquerade ball for the Dolman Museum. And they have door prizes as a result of the ticket that you don't know how much that was. So, and I understand, and again, I know, I'm not trying to be coy, because it's, the elephant in the room is this came up because of Emily's, win. I can understand with what you're saying, there could be a difference between a union and a community-free clinic.
Right.
And I think that's something else I would ask the Ethics Commission to go back and look at. For instance, there's two ways to look at it when you look at the ethical thing. One can say, well, if the only thing you do for these people is give them money, and that's all you do, from an ethics point, one could look at it and say, well, they're the last people you should be allowed to buy a game of chance from.
Yeah,
Right? I can understand that. You give us money, so we're gonna try to make you win, but
But that street's one way then. I mean, in other words, in politics, that street is both directions at all times. So if I go to the annual golf outing at Fountainhead that's sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, and I put my $135 in to play, and I walk away with $100 in my pocket because I come in some position by chance of extreme luck of playing well,
Hole
you
in
know,
one.
then,
Not a
yeah,
hole in one.
yeah, hole in one, and I'm driving away in a car. I
No, you
mean,
earned that, but, I mean, I
so
see
what
what
I'm
you're
saying is
saying.
the influence is both directions. It's not just who we have control over, but also who can we be influenced politically by.
That's true. One discussion we had was also to put a limit, a value, saying you can do these things, but any prize above a certain dollar amount would be excluded.
It's,
So, some of these things then you could do because they're not going to have a high value dollar amount to
I mean, that one contest at that tournament alone, I think is $10,000. So, again, and that's
I
all
would,
just
yeah.
chance.
And I would certainly suggest that the doing business could be something that you could seriously look at. And while you put a dollar amount on things is well and good, but a good example is what I just brought up, the community-free clinic. Okay, these were trips. I don't know if anybody was there for the Potter's Ball, but for the first time, they engaged a one of 300 groups who was used this nonprofit to raise money for. And they have wonderful trips, but the starting bid, for instance, on some of these trips were $3,500. Now, if you bid $3,500 and you win a trip, what did you really get as far as how much did you make? Could you go buy that trip for $3,500 anywhere else? See, and I understand, these are ethical issues, and that's what makes ethics so interesting. Is there rarely is, you can't find fuzzy areas. So, again, input.
Can I give you all a little perspective, and I apologize for being late, but you moved too efficiently today. We did, in my work, of course, I represent this board as well as the commission. When the commission met last time, one of the things they asked me to do was try to look around and see if there are other municipalities who have addressed this particular issue, and I can't find that anybody did. The language that our code uses for the definition of gift tracks the language of the state ethics code, and also just looking around at other municipalities, nobody has addressed this particular issue of whether a raffle or door prize constitutes a gift. One thing that I did find was a judicial ethics committee ruling that was issued back in 2009, where, with all due respect to Lou's analysis, there was a judge who won a door prize at a convention that he went to, and the question was whether or not he could accept it or not. And the Judicial Ethics Committee says the Code of Judicial Conduct does not directly address the receipt of prizes. A prize won in a drawing is essentially a gift from the sponsor of the drawing. So they're saying that a raffle, a prize, a door prize.
Who made that decision?
That was the Judicial Ethics Committee for the state of Maryland back in 2009. What they said was, look, this guy won it completely by happenstance, okay? He's not bound by anybody. And they said it was ethical for him to retain the benefit of that gift. They said, we caution you though, because he had won it at I think it's a technology convention of some sort, and what they said was, if this vendor comes knocking at your door or at the door of your courthouse to try to sell you something, then maybe you should return the gift. So there isn't, what I'm taking a long way to say is that there's not an answer to this question out there, at least not in Maryland law that I've found anywhere. And Donna was able to pull up something from the State Ethics Committee guidelines back in 2005, where they issued a ruling saying state employees should not accept door prizes, raffles, things of that nature. They don't say anything about elected officials, and I don't know why they singled out employees and not elected officials, but that was the official advice of the State Ethics Commission. So there isn't any specific guidance as to how this needs to be treated, and I think that's why it was a topic of first impression for the Ethics Commission, and they struggled with it. I wasn't involved in it, of course, because I was recused, which is one of the other topics of revision that is in front of you all today as well, if we can get to that in a bit. But I guess my question to everyone seated around the table, both the Ethics Commission and Mayor and Council, is there any appetite? What Mr. Messner's talking about is, don't call this a gift, put it in some other category, but then, Lou, are you talking about there still being a prohibition with respect to that, or are you saying?
Whether I agree or disagree with it, if that's what the Ethics Commission proposed, I wouldn't argue with it.
Okay.
I would say, okay, I don't
Then-
necessarily agree with the thought process, but I don't agree with a lot of things that you know that. But I would support it, is what I'm saying.
That's the first time I've heard that.
I would support it.
A lot of large corporations, most large corporations and government agencies have ethics laws and prohibitions against accepting any kind of gifts. Sometimes there's a monetary value associated with them, but I don't recall ever seeing one where you can't participate in a game of chance or a golf tournament or.
Well, the MML convention,
The
you take
MML.
like 100 business cards down and put them in
throw
every
in
vendor's
throw
thing,
in
and,
the fishbowl, yeah.
if that's the case, I got a big bag of candy to return. I'm just saying.
Well, I guess my question as somebody who would potentially end up drafting some of this legislation is there consensus among the folks sitting around this table to draft something in the nature of what Lou is suggesting that he might approve, but wouldn't be on the top of his list, I guess, if I'm characterizing it fairly, to segregate this notion of drawing, raffle, door prize, and then address that just in a separate section unto itself, rather than characterizing it as a gift. Because if there isn't the appetite to doing that, then I think the discussion kind of ends at this point.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, I think that they're looking for clarity. All I'm saying is I've offered an opposing perspective that still brings clarity. And that's that you specifically defined it and included, or excluded.
That it's not a gift.
Right, that the wording would say, gift excludes door prizes, raffle prizes, drawing prizes, and other similar awards of chance.
I think the specific word being games of chance.
Right.
Like where they're,
You can replace award with game, huh?
right.
Yeah, just say, and similar games of chance. That, I realize that isn't what they want, but it provides the clarity to the issue that they're seeking.
Well, and we have to trust that the other organizations that are, that are having these things, that their ethics are up to par as well. Do you know what I mean? That they're not specifically drawing one of our names out so we have to kind of trust that as well.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So we can't, we're protecting ourselves by the words game of chance.
Well,
And
well,
just, and.
I don't think this would prevent us from putting our business cards in the bowls,
Well-
down in them, and all, because
why, I think that's
Well,
a
there's
fairly
nobody down
questionable
there
issue.
that I go in there that I know that I'm doing business with.
Would you get a free lunch when you draw a business card? But you really don't get that much. We're not talking about huge amounts of money.
I think the way my Bonanza winning was handled is the way it should have been handled. You guys suggested that I am allowed to keep it, but that you suggest I donate it for the purpose of optics. And I looked at it as, I'm not important enough for an organization, a very well-respected organization, to rig a lottery machine drawing, you know, to rig it, and so I decided to keep the money and buy a house with it. And to be honest, I wouldn't live in that house with my daughter today if I wouldn't have won that. I got very lucky, and in my opinion, it was worth risking the optics of what that looked like.
And Emily-
I thought your recommendation was very appropriate, and it was handled how it should have been. It
And
was a
that-
prize.
That was a ticket to attend, right? That wasn't a separate door prize ticket? Is
No,
that
I bought
correct?
$200 Bonanza tickets where you're entered into all the drawings.
So it was a ticket to enter.
I did the same thing last
The-
year.
or- Yeah,
I
what,
just,
what you're saying.
And then like individual balls pop up.
Right,
No,
yeah.
I understand.
Which you
but-
could watch
but my
live.
You
point
know what I mean?
is-
And
No, but my
It was a
point is.
ticket to entry.
Right, this is just another example of what I'm talking about. This was a ticket to get into the place. It was not a raffle ticket.
So you got
It
food
was-
with that.
It was, we're gonna
And a
have
drink.
a huge function, we're gonna have unlimited food, beer, and music, and we're gonna charge you $100, and when we do that, you get included in a raffle, right?
well, and they have
Right.
gaming there too, and that gaming goes to support that, and it's all one big pot. So does that mean when you attend, that you also would be precluded from participating in the gaming?
It's a good question.
You know what I'm saying?
Under
I mean,
this
there's like 10 or
ordinance.
12 different sort of gaming activities going
Yeah, you
on
would
there
be.
that are, I don't know, carnival type. Would you then be like, nope, I'm gonna just be here, I can't participate in the 10 or 12 gaming? Because all that money is going into the same pot to support the same organization for its
Same-
same purposes.
It's the same as if you go to a gun bonanza and you buy your ticket, and then your ticket with your number is one of those things that they draw, and it's your number, but it's the number on the ticket that you bought to go to the gun bonanza to begin with, where there's food and beer and steak or whatever it is. But, you know, guns are valuable, well over $25. But it's the same, the fireman's bonanza is the same thing as a gun bonanza. I don't buy a separate ticket to take a chance on a gun. I've already bought my ticket. That allows me to go to the bonanza and get food and get all those things.
But the event that you're attending, they're advertising all these awards that you can win. How do you win except to buy a ticket to get in the door?
To attend the event, right?
Right. So, but you know you're in the mix.
Sure you are, sure you are. Yeah,
Winning-
that's why you buy the ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we buy the tickets to support the organizations also, so we want to be
I
a
don't ever
part
have
of
to
the
worry about it. I
community.
never win anything, so it doesn't matter to me. I just
Yeah.
go and eat.
Yeah, that'd be a
The
hard group to
losers.
carve out.
Pardon me?
That'd be a hard group to carve out and say, well, these are okay and these aren't.
What I'm
You know,
saying,
just-
right, I'm just saying that, you know, it's important for us to support the community and to buy these tickets and, you know, to go to these events and such like that. So, I mean, I can't imagine, I guess we can just buy the ticket and say, do with it what you want, but,
I never
That's
expect
no
to
fun.
win. You never expect to win,
no,
really.
I never win anything, so, ever.
With all due respect to Reverend Steele and Bill, I'm the new guy on the block. I've been to one meeting. I'm Tom Brown. I've read the minutes and so forth. I don't care about MML raffles and things like that. I think we need to just look at the possible distinction between a raffles by a local agency and a raffle done by a labor group that you negotiate with. I'm not saying that it's incorrect to do it. I'm just saying, be aware that that is something that sometimes people have a bad perception of. And for your own protection, just be aware of that. And that's my concern. It's not about going to MML or playing in a golf tournament and hitting a hole-in-one at Kristen or whatever. I mean,
He's never won $100 at a golf tournament, I can tell you right now. I've seen
And
them.
I understand the distinction.
And I will say,
That's my
I
concern.
understand the distinction.
in all due respect to you, Councilwoman, it's not, I'm sorry, this puts the spotlight on you. That was a major concern of ours, was because it was the Firemen's Union, they had endorsed you, they had campaigned, and those sort of things. And I need to also say, the decision could have gone either way. It wasn't an easy decision, and it wasn't a unanimous decision. It was a consensus of saying, okay, we'll go with it this time. But by no means would I assure anyone, next time it wouldn't go a different way. Because there was very strong feelings about it on both sides. So that's why we were looking for clarification. And I know how difficult it is to say, well, this group is included, this group isn't. I don't know exactly, but there seemed to be a more direct line in that situation than maybe at MML or the clinic or things of that nature.
I think there is a distinction that you can make there.
And I think, you know, our objective is to really clarify it so that we have something to work with when these issues come up, if they come up. And it's rare that they come up. Someone would have had to complain and file a grievance for us to really consider that matter.
Is there really a difference though? Because if the free clinic has a raffle and you win it, could the free clinic be considered to be bribing you to, during the next council meeting where an appropriation is asked for or a
That's the point I
grant?
made, when you're giving money away,
There's
it's
always
even
that chance.
more of a perception.
Just the same as
but-
a labor union, looking for special favors.
I understand where you're coming from, but the point you made about they did endorse me and everything else, I mean, you would think if they wanted to bribe someone, it would be like Kristen or Scott Nicewater, the person that sits in negotiations with them, not the person that they endorsed and, I mean, it just,
I don't think
I
they bribed you at
get
all.
what you're
That
coming
is
from,
more just a perception issue and what was said earlier. It's,
yeah, but I do agree. I understand labor unions we do business with, people we do business with, but that's every organization here, like Lou said, and like you said, I don't know how you would distinguish
Just
that. I mean, I was just at the MSO ball last Saturday. I didn't win anything, but bought a ticket. Steven's here today to talk about how we should continue funding them. How do you distinguish between that? I just think that it's a very clear difference between a gift and a prize, and I don't.
So Kristen, you've made a suggestion on language
Yeah, I like that.
that, you know, excludes door prizes, right? And it's specific. How does the rest of the body of the council feel about the language that Kristen has?
I mean, are you including the words games of chance or like the word
Yeah,
chance in there
games of
somewhere?
chance.
I think that's if it's a chance, if you're taking a chance on something, then we just have to rely on their code of ethics and the fact that they're doing the right thing. And that, yeah, that's the way I feel. I like that wording.
Can I ask how the system works? Are we the ones who decides what the ethics are, or is the ethics committee the ones who decide what the ethics are?
We're the ones who vote on what the ethics committee brings in front of us.
and any change you make is something subject to state approval.
Right. But as Jason has already laid out, there is no example any place else that he can find where this has been addressed, except in a judiciary.
So we're setting the example.
People can look to us and say, well, look what Hagerstown.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you could be one of the many municipalities that don't have to do anything at all.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more municipalities that don't have this code than there are.
Well, we're required to have a code of ethics under state law.
We are.
Not this code, though, not language like this.
Oh, no. I'm-
Right, that's what Kristen means.
We are, but out of the 157 municipalities out there, you know, we're not in that majority.
So we have to decide whether we want to change, adopt language under solicitation, accepting a gift, or leave like it was before this change was introduced, one or the other. Who's in favor of Kristen's language? All right. Who's in favor of leaving it like it was prior to the language being put in here? Okay, looks like we're gonna change the language and
I just want to be distinct, I'd make a distinction. This is your change, not the Ethics Commission.
I understand.
It's not our recommendation at all.
We
This
understand.
is your decision that we have not proposed or endorsed.
we understand. Yeah.
So we have another portion that
Yes,
we'll talk about.
when we did have the situation come up, we are represented by the same attorney you are, so he had to he recused himself, so we had to make a decision with no legal advice. We came to you, you said, we think you can do it without it. We feel uncomfortable not having legal representation if those situations arise again. And we just simply ask that in those minimal times that that occurs, we are able to go and find someone just for that one occasion, like the Human Relations Commission is allowed to do. So we're just looking for the same provision as they are allowed.
That makes sense.
That's the
Yeah.
same thing we had with our other
BZA.
incident with the
Yeah.
Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't have one attorney on
Blue.
both sides.
You need to, if you're gonna do this, you need to, at the very minimum, put a cap on the amount of legal fees that can be spent without prior authorization by the council.
That's
I know attorneys. And, I know how.
Imagine
I
that.
like this one.
So, I mean, I think you really need to do that.
And we'll just figure out what Jason charges us to
It's just, you know,
represent
that's-
us, and that'll be the cap.
Sorry? You made
Maybe
me
one way to do it, my thought on this is that if you were to have an instance where there were a conflict of interest and to seek outside counsel, I think that there are other local reputable attorneys who understand that when you represent the city of Hagerstown or any municipality, that you should do it at a reduced rate, that you're doing it sort of as a public service. My firm recognizes that, the work that we do for the city, and I suspect it wouldn't be too hard to find other folks who are of the same mind. But, you know, to Lou's point.
We should have a cap.
Yeah, if you want to have a cap, I think that's a fair thing to say.
Can you figure out a number for us?
Yeah, I could. Hadn't thought about it in advance, but
Understand.
maybe say,
Well, this has to come back before council to be
Okay.
approved anyway, so
so, yeah, I can think about it between now
Want
and
the
then.
language for the cap actually in this ordinance?
I believe so, yes.
I think so. And maybe you could say like, no more than, say, X number of hours at the rate charged by the present city attorney. And then you know that person's not gonna charge you more than what you charge for your own counsel.
That's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you, guys.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for your consideration. Appreciate it.
So, see the MSO come in? Yes. Emily, you can talk about it. Okay, go right ahead.
Great, thanks, Mayor and Council. So I'm Stephen Beaudoin, I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland Symphony. You saw me just a few months ago when I was giving you a state of the state from the MSO, and I've been asked by the City of Hagerstown's Finance and Accounting Department to respond to your questions concerning your investment in the Maryland Symphony. We're, as you know, one of several nonprofits that you support with annual grant awards. So just to start again with the basics, so we're a professional regional orchestra. We were founded here in 1982. We received $17,550 from the City of Hagerstown. That represents just over 1% of our annual operating budget of $1.5 million. Of our $1.5 million budget, 75% of the revenues that we earn are contributed revenues. Those are primarily individuals, also foundations and businesses. Of the other 25%, those are earned revenues primarily through ticket sales, including subscriptions and some contract work that we do. We produce concerts at the Maryland Theater, education programs, et cetera, but the two particular questions that the city staff asked me to respond to in my time with you are these. So how are the city of Hagerstown funds used? So we use the funds that you give to the MSO in the way that we say that we are going to use them in our proposal, namely to support our concerts and education programs. And then the other question is, what other funding sources do we utilize to run the MSO? And the answer, which I alluded to just a minute ago, is many. So other municipal funders include the Maryland State Arts Council, gives us a grant annually of $112,000. Washington County usually gives us a grant in the $35,000 range. Those are our primary other municipal funders. We have over 300 individual donors annually. Some give as little as $5 annually, some give much more than that. And then we also enjoy support from many foundations and businesses. So I'm happy with that to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Questions here?
Maybe what's the context of the sort of the question of wanting to report to you?
Oh.
Are there some changes you're
No,
considering?
no. It's a matter of policy.
I
It's a
see.
matter of policy. We have a very limited amount of folks that we give money to.
Yep.
And questions come up, well, you're giving money to organizations, you know what their finances are like? You know what their position is like? Are they audited? So it is
Yeah.
simply a routine request to,
Yeah.
Because how many do we give to? Not many, right?
There's eight, you have eight
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so there's only 8
identified.
major folks we give to,
And we
and just
do-
to keep everything straight.
Yeah, we do complete an annual audit. Just actually this morning, I was meeting with my finance committee to review our audit, which had no significant findings. We publish that on our website. We publish our 990 on our website as well.
And it also gives the organizations the opportunity to let the public know what's going
Sure.
on. Traditionally, the museum always has a luncheon, and they go over all this stuff, and the library does the same. We're not requesting a luncheon, but just
yes,
want
we
you to
are.
know it's just routine. It's just a routine request of the 8 agencies that we supply funding to do, and nobody's ever had any questions about
Sure.
whether
Okay.
your organization is financially
Is
sound.
there a
and doing
plan to
things.
grow the amount available to all organizations in future years?
No.
You know, the only reason I ask is because, as you know, the $17,550 which we receive, for which we are extremely grateful, we are so grateful, that is an important piece that we have come to rely on. And every year it buys us less. It buys us less services, buys us less time with musicians, less staff. Every year it buys us less.
Understood.
We wish we could give you more.
Believe us, yes.
Yeah. There's not, yeah, we wish.
Any other questions that folks have?
No,
No, thank you very
No.
All
much.
right,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
You are a core organization to the city of Hagerstown. That's why you get the money.
We're happy to be here. We're not going anywhere.
No, we don't want you to. Thank you.
Thanks.
You got some new digs coming up too.
We're looking forward to the new digs.
Yeah.
Right now, it's a big dig, but then
Right,
there will be
yeah,
new
it
digs.
surely is.
Yeah, that's right. October 2019, we're the first concert after it opens.
Awesome.
Yeah, anticipate seeing all of you there. Thanks.
Thank you. Eric?
So, here we are again.
Hi,
Evening. Well, last time we met, we talked about new rates for students at USMH, and possibly all students downtown, and for the businesses. So, per your direction, we met with USMH on October 16th, along with the mayor in attendance and council members Keller and Alshire. And the meeting was lengthy, but we didn't really come to an agreement. And after the meeting, during the meeting, I'll say, Mark Halsey had suggested some rates, which were kind of starting where we were with students before, at about $11 a month. And he started around $12 a month and then incrementally changed from there, about 50 cents a year through 2024, where it would top out at $14.50 for a number of years, through like 2029, 2030. The mayor offered a different suggestion and started at $21.74, and in 6 months it would go up again, another 6 months, to it end at about $48 a month.
Which would be a 25% discount at $48.
At 48, that's correct. That was, the best I can tell, rejected by USMH. So that put us at a point of, we didn't have an agreement. So through some emails and talking with Valerie, I proposed another solution again. I can't say it's a recommendation because I'm still sticking with the recommendations that we proposed and have already been passed. But what I did propose in here was starting the student rate at $48 a month, but phasing that out, and 48 being 25% discount, but phasing that out over a 5-year period. Now, I've included also the businesses in here. Now, we have not met with the businesses, so they've been contacted. Some I'm sure have already read this, reviewed this, so I don't know what their stand is on that. But basically, I was trying to find a way to, a solution that would be comparable or be acceptable, at least to this party. And that's where I'm at. And so the paperwork you have in front of you is basically saying the student rate would be $48 on January 1, or 25% discount off the current rate. When the rate changes on July 1, it would be 25% off of that. And in the next 5 years, it would slowly, or 20%, I should say. And over a 5-year period, we'd basically phase out the bulk rate and the student rate. Now, it's just another suggestion. But I also have in here a chart where if you looked at the rates that are, $2 increments from 66 on down to 48, and I don't call it a loss of revenue. It's not. It's a reduction in revenue. It's just a difference in revenue. You're going to collect so much money at $66 a month, you're going to collect so much money at $48 a month. It's just a reduction in revenue.
And I felt we had to look at it that way because those are the current rates that we have in place, and
Yes.
that is the current revenue that we are getting. And just one other quick mention, I know we had not met with the businesses, but their first proposal to us was a reduction over just 3 years of the discount. So this, we felt that they would probably be pretty comfortable with this. This is a reduction over 5 years. So it's actually a little bit better for them.
One of the responses I got from a business was that they were willing to do a ramp up over a 5-year period so that they would hit the $64 rate. But what we're missing in that is this is a moving target. We already have in the ordinance that 64 now, next year 66, the following year 68. So by the time we achieve parity, we're looking at them getting to a $74 rate, I believe. Yes.
Yes.
Year 5.
Right.
So that's something we need to keep in mind. The only thing I can see, we've had a number of emails, and we've had opinions from other people in the political community. The only thing that I can see, if we can't achieve this kind of funding, then that negates the requirement of about $8 million coming up fiscal year 20 and 21 to begin construction of a third deck. So if we're not going to do this, then I think we need to take the third deck off the table. I mean, basically, you can't do it without this kind of funding. At that point, then, I think we would have to look at, if we need a third deck, turning that, trying to use economic development money to entice a private developer to develop a private parking deck downtown to supply that resource. But The way I read the figures here and the way the budget was presented, this increase is needed across the board if we're going to hit that $8 million nut in fiscal '21.
You know, the 5-year projections in the budget did not have any rate increases in them, because when that was developed, it was in early spring, and the rates weren't adjusted. So the rate increase will certainly help get return correct. When
Well,
that
we
deck
still
is
have
built,
a-
we're gonna be upside down
We still
pretty
have a
quickly.
deficit
Absolutely.
in cash flow
The
here.
deficit's in
Absolutely.
there
Yeah,
because
the
the rates,
deficit's definitely in
the
here.
rates weren't in there.
No.
Parking deck was, so it showed you, if we don't have the rates, the huge deficit that you're going to have.
So, I mean, I think that's basically our two choices, is either we go with the rates as in the ordinance, or we take the idea.
Of course, that's presuming that we eat all that cost of the parking deck and it's not shared in some way with the state or a private developer.
Correct. I think it's been pretty clear from the state, though, based on my information, that they will not fund a parking deck. They just won't. Now, there might be other ways of funding it, but I believe I think some of the elected officials have tried and found that the state just doesn't fund parking facilities.
Unless it's to help enhance an entity of theirs like district court.
May I
Maybe.
suggest that while this is all important and needs to get done and needs to get resolved, one, I tend to agree with Austin right now that the rate increase is significantly tied to a third deck versus current needs. I do not take the correspondence that we've had from our state folks lightly. I do not take lightly the last sentence in the letter from our state senator, who I have a great deal of respect for. I think for us not to back off this rate increase right now and sit down with our state representatives, explain to them in detail what our concerns are and where we need to go, and seek their support one way or the other. Because it's ironic that we would discuss state funding for something while at the same time looking to basically thumb our nose up at the very folks we're looking to give assistance from. So I think we ought to just negate the whole thing that we did, because you're right, it's the law now. I think we need to move to get rid of it. And I think we need to sit down with our state delegation. This is not an emergency. If we're doing this for a third parking deck, if it's 6 months from now, then maybe the third parking deck will be 6 months later down the road. But I see the amount of cooperation we've had with the state and the county, and everything we're trying to do with the university system. And I see that kind of letter right now saying, I'm not going to look very highly upon any other things in the city of Hagerstown if you guys just go ahead and do this. I take it seriously, and I think we as a body should take it seriously, especially with the amount of funding we've been getting from the state and the cooperation we've been getting. Maybe they have some ideas that we don't. I sure would rather have their support than their total disdain. That's just my feeling.
I don't disagree with you, but we've been having this conversation since when? June, May, April?
January.
January.
Yes.
January. Now here we are, finally, after all these meetings, meeting after meeting. I mean, how many Excel charts have you done now? You're probably Excel'd out, right? I mean, he has been willing to compromise. It's just been over and over and over again. Now, 6 hours before we have this conversation again in public, we get that very strongly worded email, not only to us, but to pretty much every community partner around Washington County that has any sort of influence whatsoever, when not one of those people, with the exception of Mr. Halsey and a few others, have reached out to us and expressed any concern. That's frustrating for me, and I understand what you're saying, and we don't want to tick them off. But to go about it in that fashion, we're a year into this, and what, 25 meetings, and we've had several public conversations, and you wait until hours before to send an email like that and include the people that were included on there. I just think is
Not arguing the point with you.
I don't think that's handled very well, and I don't think it's very fair to you, and I don't think it's very fair to all the meetings that we've had about this to all of a sudden put that kind of pressure when that pressure has not been put on for, 11 months now?
So this email was sent not to, did you receive any, no staff person, just
no idea
elected
what
officials?
Well, the reason you guys didn't receive it, and let's be real honest here, is exactly like the conversation we had when the hospital folks came in and said, hey, city, we'd really like to help out with a project down there if we can just get the right people at the table to talk about the fact that we don't want to annex our property out near the hospital into the city. I mean, that's exactly how it was written, that's exactly how it came off, and that's exactly why it went to the folks that it came to. And it's no secret who the members are that aren't on board that are sitting at this table, and I happily raise my hand as one of them. And I do it because of this. It harkens back to the debate that the city and the county long held when the state folks got involved over the city's determination of the rate adjustments that it should make to the enterprise fund system that it owns and manages, water and sewer. I mean, I remember a decade ago, when folks would be trying to collaborate in rooms, trying to figure out how to have authority over how the city managed the rate and long-term stability rate calculations applied to manage against water and sewer resources. And I find it odd because a few minutes from now, we're going to be talking about our 5-year rate plan for water and sewer, an enterprise fund that we own and manage. And the reason we're talking about 2% and 3% adjustments in those rates are largely because we have forecasted exactly how we want to manage the stability of that enterprise fund system that we own. And I find it odd that we're so ready and willing to sort of hand over that management at the onset of threat of an enterprise fund that we equally have the responsibility of owning and managing, like our parking fund. I don't know how, and I realize everybody keeps saying, oh, this is about a third deck. It's not. It's about whether or not we have the ability to provide an adequate level of parking over the course of time for the expected need that we believe we'll have in this urban area that we manage that resource for.
And I think,
I don't know why. I look at the figures and I keep trying to do the calculations and think to myself, we take a parking deck off of the table in 2021. I mean, it's no different than saying, you know what, we shouldn't go out and fix the Brickner plant, and we shouldn't go out and rehab the Edgemont Reservoir because it's not needed right now, this second. And we'll just wait till that day when we think it might be, and then we'll start collecting some money to do it. And we don't pigeonhole those types of improvements and expansions in those parts of the enterprise funds that we own. Why would we do any differently for this one?
and I would only say, Kristen, what we're about to talk about with wastewater and water as an example of how things should be done when you mentioned that we're going to be talking about 2% and 3% rate increases. And I would imagine if we were talking about 2 or 3% rate increases like we should have been doing over the last 10 to 15 years, we wouldn't have this problem. But we haven't, and that's one of the problems. And I mean, it's we're not trying to sell a 2 to 3% rate increase over the next 5 years. We wouldn't be sitting here having these issues if we were.
We're also not giving anybody within our water and sewer system wholesale free access to that utility.
No, I understand,
Right.
and I'm not, listen, I'm not here at all, you haven't heard me mention one time what staff has suggested is not appropriate. I see it as a very different animal. I think we need to make sure we have all the players in hand. You're right about the amount of copies this went out to, and I just think that That's my own opinion, that's all.
I would only say that the rate changes we enacted were from 62 to 64 to 66, which is 4% and under.
Right.
Because they haven't changed for a while. I'll also remind that we changed parking meter rates from 25 cents to 50 cents, and it was 25 years before they went from 25 cents
No,
to
that's
50
what I'm
cents.
saying, that's exactly what I'm
So-
saying, Eric, that's,
So if we
we're waiting
continue
them
to
to
keep
double.
putting things off, this is the position we're put in.
I
The issue we're
agree.
talking about is a incremental change to a $40.70 semester rate, which was ridiculously low. And if you're gonna raise that by 2 or 3%, you're talking.
No,
No, I
listen,
agree with
I
this.
totally understand everything
Yep.
you're saying, I totally agree with everything you're saying.
But to your point, that's something that should have been increased over the last 10 years to get up to parity. And now we're trying to get to parity.
In an
I think they're
extreme-
two different things.
I agree.
We're adjusting the rate for everybody that was paying the prevailing rate by a very small amount.
Right.
In the other hand, what we're doing is we're indicating to those entities that have received a fairly free, pass on that rate scale, that free pass is going to be phased out. And staff's brought forward 4 different scenarios now under which we can do so, none of which are acceptable. And by not accepting any one of those simply means that it places the stability of this fund in jeopardy of being adequately financed over time, not just for this third deck, but for a number of the major improvements that staff has outlined for the next 6 years. That's what's going to happen. It isn't going to be that we can't afford a third deck. It's going to be if we go down as low as what's being suggested, we're not even going to be able to afford, unless we put that cost onto some other portion of the rate group, those major improvements that are needed to both of those decks in the 6-year capital program.
And it was also
Right.
about equity. These funds, this parking fund you should think of this fund exactly the same way that you think of water, sewer, and electric. No different. Treat everybody the same, everybody pays the same rate. That's how this fund is supposed to be operating, and that's the only way that it's going to be healthy.
Or come up with a uniform discount, you know what I mean, that applies equally. In other words, I don't think that we can sit here moving forward and go back and say, you know what, one group is going to get
That's just wrong. That's
an
just
adjustment,
wrong.
and other educational institutions are not going to get that adjustment. I don't think you can do that.
I find it fascinating what happens when you're trying to do something like getting a university to come downtown, and then what happens 10 years after you've achieved that goal when somebody says, it's ridiculous to charge them less money than other people. It wasn't ridiculous when we did it. We did it for a reason. It's the same thing that Middletown Bank says. And no, I disagree. And I've said it over and over, and I'll say it again. It is not the same as water and sewer. There is a part of this that is economic development. If you tell people that you want to entice them to come to your downtown core, and in that enticement, you give them what we now say are ridiculously low parking rates, and then you decide X amount of years later, with a different administrations, oh my God, this is absurd. We gotta make it, what's the percentage increase we're looking for the students?
For the students?
Yeah.
To go from what they were to this, 500-some%, whatever it is.
I mean,
That's
I'm
outrageous.
sorry, that to me doesn't work. It was done for a reason.
But the
And we gotta
student
find
rate
somebody
wasn't
else to
that,
pay for it.
but the student rate wasn't
So
that.
you gotta
low
pick
to
another
keep.
group that's gonna pay for it. It's either gonna be your taxpayers,
Alright.
or it's gonna be other ratepayers.
You're
in the
absolutely correct,
parking system.
Kristen. I don't disagree with you at all. I don't disagree with you at all on that point. And I'm also not agreeing that this ridiculously low rate should stay in existence. But I do think, no matter what, when you go to a 500% increase, you can expect the kind of reaction we're getting. That's,
So let's go out and let's say, and Mayor, you came up with one that was like $21 or something, right? $21,
Per-
which is per
Semester.
month. I think it's per
Per
month,
month.
right?
$9
Which is
increase over
Which is a $9 increase. That, as we've heard, is apparently unacceptable. It's $22 versus 12, I think, right? And so, and it has a schedule over time, right here in one of the charts. And so, if that one's unacceptable, how low, I mean, what the alternative was like going from 12 to 12.50 to 13 to 13.50. I mean, a $2 increase over a 5-year period. All I'm saying is if the lowest one offered of the 4 proposals of the mayor's is unacceptable and it's $9, then you should just decide some other absurdly low number and just accept that you're going to put that burden on other ratepayers within that system or the taxes. Or not fix the decks over time.
Or you can move forward on one of the recommendations tonight and, listen, I have absolutely no problem. I don't want to anger any of our state representatives who have been helpful in the urban improvement project, basically, specifically the University of Maryland expansion, Barbara Ingham School for the Arts, and the Maryland Theater, all of which pay no taxes. I have no problem with our state delegation and our state leaders helping out with that. I do have a problem when people tell me that the state's not going to help the city of Hagerstown build a parking deck when it's needed. And in the same breath, don't want us to have a cushion and a fund that can build a parking deck on our own. So.
And all I'm saying.
And all,
We need to have that conversation with them.
Listen, at the sake of making our state representatives angry, a $9 increase for student parking at the university deck a month?
Well, I'd like your senator to tell us if that is not reasonable. And if that isn't reasonable, I'd like him to explain knowing what we're trying to do, I'd like to hear some suggestions. It's very easy to sit on the outside and write a letter like that.
This decision has to be made prior to January 1, no matter what we do. Because January 1, the rate is $64.
Right. I
Okay?
understand that.
So something has to be decided before January 1.
I would hope that it was.
It's currently 64.
And again, it's $64 come
Right.
January 1.
No, I agree, Bob.
Put your hand down, Mark.
I agree. I would certainly ask Senator immediately to engage with us. It doesn't have to be in a formal session, and I understand if we're gonna talk to him in an informal session, and it can only be 2 of us and the mayor, but I think that should be done immediately.
Has the senator seen your proposal?
I don't know if he's seen my proposal.
Right, exactly. That's, I just want to show him the deference to say that we are willing to discuss it with him.
I think the proposal was, that was a good middle ground, but when I look at the numbers, you basically, for July of 2019, if you gave them an 80% discount, that would bring it to $13.20. You're gonna have to hit parity by year 5. So you're gonna basically go 80%, 60, 40, 20, and 0%. So by year 5, they'll be paying $74 like everybody else. So the way the ramp goes, year 1, 13.20, year 2, 27.20, year 3, 42, year 4, 57.60, then they're up to $74, then everybody's level. And that's about the only way you're gonna hit parity in a 5-year.
Listen, I don't believe that's as important. I understand the importance the University of Maryland plays in downtown. I truly do. All right? So I'm willing to concede that we don't treat them like everybody else. And I know some people don't like that. But unfortunately, as Lou has mentioned, parking is a form of economic development, without a doubt. And I don't think that someone who goes to University of Maryland, downtown Hagerstown, ever has to pay full rate, ever. I just don't feel that way. But that's me. But, trying to find a compromise that works is impossible. Unless this body of 5 elected officials decide that's the compromise number we're using. That's the only way it works. And I'm willing, hey, listen, I don't care if we wait till, the last week of December to do it. So that new students starting in January have whatever rate they're gonna end up with. But something has to happen, or else come January, students at the University of Maryland will be coming downstairs and paying $64.
I think it's important for us to hear then, because Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, what we heard at that meeting that we had was you can't treat individual entities differently within an enterprise fund. That you can't single out the university and
We've been doing it, Kristen.
Okay, I'm just saying, if that's not true, then we need to hear that, because that's been a big issue for me in looking at these numbers, is even in these sheets, it shows those other entities, and so that has an impact on that budget stability. All I'm saying is if it is truly able to be different, that's important to me, because if you're able to then carve those other out, that has a different economic impact on the bottom line.
Well, then we've been doing it wrong for 15 years.
I don't know. All I'm saying is at that meeting, that's what we heard. And I just want to know if it's true or not true.
It is
because
true.
if it
Then
is
how do we-
true,
Then how do we get away with it for 15 years?
Well, we probably won't again because we haven't had an audit finding on it. But clearly, with all this public discussion, I'm sure we will have an audit finding on it.
and I just want to know, I want clarity of that, because that's talking about either 100 or it's talking about
That's why-
200. And that's a very different number as it
That's why
applies to
we
these
included all
lines
students,
on the
because if
chart.
you're gonna
You
give
could
the
still treat the
discount.
students, all the students the same, but make the discount in one deck, like, that's
Right,
one
which is
way to
what's
control that
recommended.
somehow.
And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right.
Which is why I liked your
That's what you could do
5%
that.
proposal.
Yeah.
Over 5 years to everybody, because it was consistent and it was specific. And I
Yes.
don't care if you went to 50%,
Well,
as
then,
Austin suggested in over 5
why are
years ago,
students different
50, 40,
than-
30, 20, 10.
Than the bank people.
I don't know.
Oh, okay, all right. Because you're still giving other people different rates than you're giving.
I don't know, I'm
other
just trying to be
people in a
consistent with what I
enterprise
heard at the
fund.
meeting is that.
Enterprise fund.
The bulk
Is
rate
it
was put
user
in.
groups need to be consistently.
They had a
In other words, if it's a
definition, they were-
for-profit, or it's an education, or it's a nonprofit, what I heard at that meeting is you can't treat those different user groups differently. And all I'm saying is however we have to define them and compartmentalize them, and then apply that discount over a 5-year period, whether it's the 25% over 5 years, or it's 50% at 10% increments over 5 years. You know what I mean? Come up with some number that allows us to see, what does that mean at the end of the day to the bottom line, to this proposal? And let our state folks see what that means in terms of whether we're able to afford the expansion of parking facilities as a part of our parking availability. I mean, I think it's that clear.
And you have that in here because you included all the students.
To answer your question, the bank people aren't different. The difference was that in 1996, a different council, obviously, than anybody here, passed a temporary measure, which was any entity, didn't have to be the bank, or it was any entity that had 10 or
It
more.
had a definition.
10 to 24 people on parking on one check, one payee, we get a 10% discount, and 25 or more, we get a 25% discount. It just so happened that the bank had 25 or more. So it's not that it doesn't specify any specific entity. Washington County gets a discount, I've given the discount, I've shown you all.
Anyone who meets the
everything.
definition,
So anybody met
that's
that
allowed.
definition, that's the
I got your email,
difference.
I got it.
The university students were paying full rate when they first started here for a number of years. It wasn't until I took over the system, and what it was is we had a $1 evening rates, and I explained this before, but in an email, but I'll explain it again. So what happened was, the students were paying $1 in the evenings. And there was a concern about, well, geez, there you have to carry $1 and blah, blah, blah. So what we did was we came up with and at the time, we could modify the permits so that they only operated after 5 o'clock. So we came up with a student rate that was $15 a month for those that would be evening students. From there, it just kind of, so honestly, it didn't come to Mayor and Council for approval. This council or the council board didn't approve that. It's something we did on our own. to help the students out. And what happened is that, well, we need student, 5 o'clock doesn't work for me, let's start at 4:30. Okay, so then we adjusted the permits. It got out of hand. The next thing you know, we ended up with $40.70 a semester. That's how it got to be. That's what we got to.
So that rate,
And
that,
this was a way to clean that back up and to get back to zero, where everybody was paying the same rate, which they're doing now.
that discounted rate then for the students did not entice economic development to bring the
No.
university here?
No.
Okay. I just want that to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was clear.
So just so you understand, it was an economic driver at that time. And the bulk discount was in 1996. If you remember, that was only at the university deck, which was built in 1986. And 10 years after the fact, apparently they couldn't get enough people to use the deck. So it was a way to entice businesses to do it. And right now, we've had less than a dozen.
Yeah, Lou was
entities
part of
use
that
it.
in 1996.
Oh, no, sorry. I don't want to imply any kind of age here or anything, so. So that's how it came to be. To me, the numbers are what they are. I can crunch as many numbers as you want. I think I've given you 40 different scenarios. You just have to pick a number, you know, either keep it the same, go back to nothing, or whatever.
But at some point, though, the number that we pick is going to drive the ability to do a third deck
Partially, sure.
out of the parking fund.
Sure. The parking fund is self-supported, and if it can't be self-supported, if we end up with a deficit of hundreds of thousands of dollars, it has to come from somewhere. You have to decide where that's gonna come from. And if you wait until the deck's built and then start raising rates,
that's not gonna be.
you're already too late,
Yeah.
in my opinion, but.
I think to Lou's point, it would be interesting to know if there is any interest on the part of the state in helping with that.
I mean, do you think that we're really gonna get an answer for that by
don't
the end of December? I'm gonna go with probably
No,
not.
I don't anticipate the state's going to help us at all. What I'm looking for help from is Senator Serafini has made it clear that he finds what we have done or are about to do is totally unacceptable to a substantial degree. And I'm just saying, it is very easy to criticize, and I understand that. Best way to solve that problem is to invite in Senator Serafini to a meeting and say, this is our issue. What do you suggest we do? How do you suggest we do this? Are you telling us that we should just raise our taxes to build a third parking deck? That we shouldn't build a third parking deck? That we shouldn't raise our fees at all? What are you suggesting we do? That's all I'm saying. And when you say we have to have an answer by January 1, we absolutely do. I would just, if I had my druthers, I would prefer that when we do it, we have the support of our state delegation instead of having every one of them get up and criticize what how much have we been talking about? What we're trying to put forth to our community.
We have to be open for business.
And so what do we have here? We have a letter from our state senator basically saying, in its own words, everything they say about you is true. And are we going to just ignore that letter, or are we going to sit down and say, what can we do to get it so that that's not a perception that we're trying to be difficult? That's all I'm saying.
I agree with that.
That's
And I
it.
think if we
That's-
saw all the different options
Yeah,
that we were
that's
putting
all.
out, this would be a different conversation.
Yeah, I would love to have his support.
Realist. Even a few dollars a month can be extremely impactful for students,
And you
and
have
we know
41
that.
people that have a way to resolve those complexities. I'm all ears.
Right, and if they don't, then it's up to us, and our answer
There'll
is.
be the same
we
41
met-
people 3 years from now saying, where's the deck? Where's the deck? Where's the deck?
I'd like to be able to say we met with our delegation and we've all been able to come up with a solution we can live with, or they offered us no help at all.
I agree with Lou.
That would continue.
I think that, I mean, based on the email that we received today from the senator, I would say that he hasn't seen these and hasn't seen these
Bob, could you try to get
proposals.
us a meeting with Andy? Could you try to get us a meeting with the senator?
Oh, I can, but you
So
know,
we
it
have to
came
get them
to
on
the
the same
meeting
page.
that I had along with the business people and the University of Maryland, the very first one. And his stance was no rate increase.
I
period.
understand.
So I don't think that's gonna change.
I understand.
But I have no problem putting together a meeting. Okay. Thank you, Eric. You can go sit
Thanks,
back
Eric.
now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for a lot.
Water and wastewater 5-year rate plan. Great.
Thank you for the segue, appreciate it.
All right, Mike.
How y'all doing?
Can't wait till every citizen calls and complains that their rates is gonna go.
Couldn't let Eric be the only one on the bus, right?
Oh my gosh, now. First off, thanks our administrative staff and utilities, city's financial staff, city administrator for overview, and municipal financial services, our consultant who's we've been working on for many months now to put this together. This is about our 4th or 5th iteration of this draft that we put together to get our numbers where we're comfortable. I think hopefully we all agree, our assumptions are very conservative, as we've always been in the utilities. When you look at inflation rate of 1.5%, customer growth rate of 0.4%, our actual customer usage is down on both water and wastewater. So we have that factored in to what we've plugged into all of our numbers, utilizing the CIP that we have in place that was approved in the last budget for the next 5 years. Right to the chase, as you've alluded to, for a wastewater increase of 2% per year and a water increase of 3% per year is what this draft that we've been working in most recently has taken us to. You look at, there's certain indices that we kind of go against. We got our numbers down and look basically at that point in time what the indices were. The construction cost index, building cost index, which is what it costs to do construction in the area. It's over 3% per year for the last 15 years. So we feel very comfortable with what we've arrived at. A number really falls into place with the indices that we look at. Consumer price index is like 2.1% average per year for the last 15 years. We're in a strong cash position. You'll hear me use the word conservative a lot. Our philosophy financially is very conservative. We're standing at an excess of $8 million on both funds at present. Now, we want to spend some of that cash down to keep these increases down so they're palatable more for our users. And our users still, as you all know, for water, we have a larger user base outside the city than in. We supply about 90,000 users total water, 55,000 wastewater, more inside customers on the wastewater. Some of the items that we're requesting that we don't really think we need to change in is our wastewater surcharges. We're comfortable with the costs that we charge for BOD, COD, suspended solids. We have less than 12 customers that affects, so it's a very small revenue stream for us. Another one, we have 330 grinder pumps. We're not proposing to increase any of the fees we charge on that. We try to change out about 10% a year. We come to you all every year requesting 30 grinder pumps. You've been very good to us, and so we keep that maintenance program up. We're keeping it up in place with that. We didn't plug in, at this present time, any increase in the benefit and allocation charges that we charge. These are for new customers coming into the system. This money is used specifically for CIPs to facilitate upgrades to the facilities, to our plants, basically. Currently, we charge $2,500 per EDU for water, and we charge $4,400 per EDU for an inside wastewater customer, $5,000 outside. So when a customer comes online, it's $70-some hundred that we charge to them, benefit and allocation. Once again, it goes directly into CIP, directly for new investment. We get $180,000, $200,000 a year is basically what we get off of that.
Just water or water and sewer?
Water and sewer together, water and wastewater together. So, we kind of put this as a question. I say you'll have some there for us. You feel it's too low?
I have a statement, not a question. Go ahead.
Okay. Is the statement it's way too low, Mike? You need to increase it a little bit, or at least think about
We did an
increasing
analysis.
it?
We did analysis in the jurisdiction that I work for of a regional cost comparison. And I say to my elected body all the time, you can't compare any two systems. They are all so unique that there's just, one person that moves from one place to another can't look at a water and sewer bill and look at their new one and say, oh, I was paying this here. It just doesn't work. But anyway, there was about 16 different jurisdictions. Yours was, the cities was included. And you're by far the lowest. by far, the lowest. I think you guys and Woodsboro are the two lowest in the region. And the range is probably somewhere between, we did 18,000 gallon average usage, which is way higher than the average uses. The average is about 13,000, but it was like $140, to like $450. And so there's like a $300 range there, and the average bill is about $300. And so it just gives you an idea. And I think connection cost on average was about $16,000. And I think you just said $7,500. And so it's just interesting. But none of those systems built their system in 1928. And,
correct.
On the Potomac and have all that infrastructure put in place now. So in the average rate increase over a 7-year period from 2011, when we did the last analysis, to 2018, was 52% on average.
Wow.
And yeah, you guys are like less than 10.
Correct.
I think 4 is net on the 18,000 gallon usage, and so the average is 52. So you've increased about, what, 1/10 of what the average in the region is seeing. Some folks in the region were 165% increases. And so it just gives perspective of just how cheap we are selling the resource for.
Okay, you just made your case for you, thank you.
He did, thank you for that. So we can look at plugging that in for the benefit allocation. That's a great help to our CIP. It defers costs, helps keep the rates down. The 3% per year takes our water benefit fee from $2,500 to $2,875. Once again, it's a small group that actually pays that. Our typical users, it's nothing to them. Fire line fees, we haven't increased them since 2015. We did a one-time 15% increase. We were looking at a 3% per year on that to help phase that in. We only have 246 unmetered fire line customers. Those charges go from 4-inch to 12-inch, whatever we serve them with. 80% of the customers are in the 6- and 8-inch range. It's just billed per year. A 4-inch customer would go from $192 to $220 a year total through the 5-year period. That's basically our increase for rates, and I love to hit it at the end when we do comparisons. We all love numbers and speak numbers. For our inside city rate customer, our proposed 3% for the next fiscal year, it would cost 75 cents per month would be the increase to a 10,000 gallon user per quarter, 75 cents per month. A combined outside city rate, they pay about twice as much outside with the rates. It's $1.46. $1.46. You're exactly
The average
correct.
jurisdiction that I researched, it was about $3 per month. That's inside that jurisdiction. So even the outside jurisdiction here is half of what the average is on inside jurisdiction, these comparative places. And that was all the way down to WSSC. So.
Fortunately, this would be the third time of our 5-year rate increase structure that we've been using. If something would occur, we keep the model updated yearly. If something would occur, something catastrophic, some major event would cause us to expend funds, we can make a change in that 5-year to come back to the council and have a change. So it's great for us. We budgeted for it. We're locked in. Our customers know how to budget. If something catastrophic happens, we can come in and make a change mid in the 5-year term if that would happen. We've been very fortunate. Operationally, financially, we haven't had to make that request. We live within our means, and we still have a nice cash position at the moment. So we're confident if we keep our same methodologies in place, we can continue serving the citizens as we've had in the past, fairly economically. So we'll come back probably in January, February, go over a final presentation, and then we'll have to have a open meeting. We'll put it out in the newspaper, invite everybody to come in if they want to speak, and then we'll come back to the council and then do it through the ordinance process. So it'll probably be next February. Probably we'll come back in and with something finalized for everybody to vote on, if we're good. And I'll keep you up to date, update between then.
And just it would be our intent unless, we were directed to do otherwise, that when we prepare our budgets, begin preparing our budgets for the upcoming fiscal year, late, in December-ish, that we would use this proposal to do so, so that we kind of know how to plan and forecast in our budgets.
So you'll see it twice from us, then, in other words.
All right.
Good on that one?
Town of Funkstown Utilities, Water and Wastewater.
Yes,
Was there a request?
Town of Funkstown came to us, actually, it's been approximately 1 year ago, and we've been in discussion with them, thanks to Jen Kiefer, Ed Kaczynski. They've had a lot of input, the two attorneys for the city and the town. The property in question is 44.11 acres that lies west of the Antietam Creek. It is what is going to be currently bisected by the Southern Boulevard. It's within the town's boundaries, Town of Funkstown's boundaries. It's very cost prohibitive for them to attempt to even supply services to get underneath the Antietam into their facilities. So they've requested both water and wastewater services from the city. Water services, there's really no great issue in regard to that. We have a water service agreement that's in place with them. We would supply them with a third meter that'd be located off of Frederick Street. We have 2 water mains in position already. No issue for providing them for water services. That's already captured, and the legalities are already worked through on that. The wastewater service is a different question. What we proposed in working through with them is a joint service area. We currently have joint service areas set up through the county through the Consolidated General Services Agreement dated 1993, I believe. There are 7 or 8 areas in the county that are already designated for wastewater services where the county owns the infrastructure and the flow comes to the city. So there's a rate decrease in regards versus our outside rate and a joint service rate because we don't own and maintain the infrastructure. It's about 15% is about the difference, is what we're seeing right now through the rate study is how we did the calculation on that. So the area that they've proposed, it's actually zoned residential. They've requested a 40 EDU cap, which is 8,000 gallons per day of wastewater flow. All gravity flow into our 21-inch interceptor. It's basically a quarter of a mile from the plant. So we can accept and treat any effluent without any issue at the plant. How it would work is, once again, we're going to build them 1 unit for water off of the meter that serves this area. In the joint service area, since they actually own the infrastructure, we'll take their meter readings. They'll supply the water meter readings to us per each meter, and then we'll do the calculation and send each of their customers a bill from the city. They'll also receive a wastewater bill from the town of Funkstown also with their charges for the fixed fees, whatever they charge, and whatever that rate differential is. So the charge from us will be the same as we charge all our other joint service area customers because we're doing the exact same process that we work with them that we do with all the areas out in the county. Those are all basically in the north end is where the joint service areas are. I think we're...
Do we currently serve that property?
No.
How does that property currently receive service?
I assume by well.
Will we serve that property when service is extended?
Talking about the existing residents that's on the property, I would certainly assume that they would, I don't know what the proposed usage is of that property when it's done. If it's going to continue as a residential, I would assume it's going to be such, but they may ask for services from us.
I think that if the majority here are okay with this, that would be a condition I would make. I'm not in favor of this. I have some difficulty that goes back a little further than just this specific request. If you look at this area on a map, you will notice 2 things. One is there is a unincorporated area along Frederick Street that is currently surrounded by incorporated area, meaning the city of Hagerstown and the town of Funkstown. And I think that's an issue that some party needs to resolve. And I feel that by us extending services into that area ignores that current condition. I was looking for Kathy back there. And, right, am I correct, there's an unincorporated area that's surrounded by incorporated area?
Yes, a number of years ago, Funkstown did an annexation, and no one picked up on the fact that it came up and touched the city boundaries, and it left Funkstown Hill as an island of unincorporated land.
So for me, that's an issue, once we start extending our utilities into this additional property, without addressing that issue, that we've sort of accepted that issue, even though it doesn't appear to be acceptable per that language in state code. And the second issue is there doesn't appear to have been a necessity to do that. And what we have now in effect done by allowing that to occur, frankly, is we're now going to extend our utilities into an area that frankly, I don't see much differently than when South Point was developed, should rightly have been incorporated within the city of Hagerstown. I mean, that's part and parcel to our purpose of extending those urban services, you know, in exchange for that urban tax base. And in this case, what we're plainly doing is saying, hey, you know, sure, here's more of our service. And then beyond that, there was a time about 12 years ago when this was all sort of initially transpiring, where Funkstown upgraded its wastewater utility system and had the opportunity to connect that municipal system to the city's system for service and forego the cost of rebuilding and expanding that wastewater system. Did not do so, or did not convert to the city system, which clearly, I'm just going to guess by the numbers, had an impact on rates for those municipal customers of Funkstown, to have to take on that additional new debt. Versus just pushing it over the hill to the city plant. But now, this particular property, frankly, is going to get the benefit, albeit at a marginally increased cost, of not having to go to that system that the other ratepayers have to pay a much larger quarterly cost for. They get to go to the city system at a less cost than the rest of the system. And I just, I have those issues with it, and I'm just not
Understood.
In favor. So.
Would you like me to schedule the town of Funkstown to come in for a discussion? Do it. I know this is your opinion
That's up to you
on this
guys.
too, but as I look around the table, do we need more discussion from the town of Funkstown with them present? We made a presentation strictly from our point of view for how it would affect our systems and through the request, but if there's other questions that I can't answer that the town can.
Any attorneys have looked over the agreement and they're fine with
The
it?
agreements were drafted between the two attorneys,
Between the two
correct?
attorneys.
Yes, it took months.
I'm okay with it. Can I get a poll? Lou?
I'm interested in what Kristen has to say. I certainly wouldn't mind talking to Funkstown people. I don't have any opposition to this, but I also hear what Kristen is saying. I have no problem with meeting with Funkstown folks.
I don't have any opposition.
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
Awesome.
I'm okay with it. I agree with Lou. I wouldn't mind hearing, but I'm not opposed.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'll get in contact with the town of Funkstown and request they come in then to meet with the mayor and council.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I would do that.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yep.
All right, last one, buddy.
Trifecta.
Request an amendment to the water and wastewater policy for essential government services.
I don't have a problem with it.
What we're trying to protect is the operational issues with the system to make sure that if they do want to come in the hinterlands where our facilities aren't currently in place to take care of peak day, average day, fire flow, that the upgrades would definitely fall directly on whoever the requester is. The one that's currently in discussion, of course, is on Sharpsburg Pike. Fortunately for them, fortunately for us, it's on the 16-inch water main. 1 million gallons a day goes by there, so the capacity is within the infrastructure to serve that property.
Right now, our water and wastewater policy provides 9 exceptions to our guideline that we don't.
And this doesn't fall under any of them.
Right, didn't fit any of those because it's economic development, it's health issues, this was a government service. And so when this was coming up, we were finding out there wasn't sufficient water on the property, I suggested, well, maybe it would be reasonable for the policy to have an essential government services exemption, because sometimes the things that we do is tied to land, and it doesn't matter where a growth boundary it is, it has to be near a river, it has to be whatever. And so maybe that should be something that's a consideration. So the county commissioners have made that request, that we amend the policy to have that kind of an exception, and then they hope to use it for the Public Safety Training Center.
What's their amount they're looking to request?
I've not received the full request from yet for how many EDUs they need down there.
No, they know that this is our hurdle that you have to get past.
The reason I ask that is because what we're being asked to do is say that we're willing to extend our available capacity outside of the area that we have determined we have available capacity for.
Correct.
Right? That over the course of time, based on our system construct, we can serve this area at this foreseeable development capability. Here is a request to go outside of that, which means that we either got to address it later on in some fashion, or adjust the bubble, so to speak, at some other location. And I think the two things are important. One, I think we need to know what that number is, because while we have an understanding that this is for a training facility, which I still argue whether that is a term that fits essential. I think it's a governmental service, but I don't think it's essential. And I certainly don't think it's essential as it applies to being able to locate it within the MRGA. I mean, that's a big, big area that a lot of folks have had a lot of ideas of where that type of facility could go. The county chose this location, and it's outside of the growth area, and therefore they chose, that decision to put it in that location, in spite of there being other locations within this really big area that we can serve. So I think we need to know a number, and in addition, we've heard at least a couple of ideas on what it could or may not include, which I think has an impact on, how much service capability is needed.
Well, if we made this change to policy, when they come forward for a formal request for the center, then all that kind
All
of
that will be
detail would be.
contained there.
Yeah.
This was the cart before the horse.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is, I think that if we're going to do that as part of this change, you should have somewhere specified in there, on any of these that we go outside of the MRGA, and especially for the governmental entity that sort of controls, some mechanism of how that's defined, that you give up space somewhere else. That somewhere else, outside or inside of that line, has to be outside of the line. And then we'll look at that at another time in the future, if we want to bring it back in based on service capability. Otherwise, we could have 12 different requests and 1 million gallons before you know it, based on a blanket, notion that all of them are governmentally driven. I think that's a bit too broad of a stroke.
I think
right.
at least how it's written currently, you still have the option to deny that when it comes to on a case-by-case basis. each question that you have on that, if
Whether
this
you're
body.
convinced or not that it's
If
essential.
this body strongly feels that way, you're the final say on what occurs in any of these requests. So when I'll look at it, Kathy will look at it, whoever the director of utilities is at that time, they'll be looking at system capacity and operations. That's gonna be our number one influence on how our decision's made. Can we serve it? If we can't, what's it take to serve it? And all that'll be worked out ahead of time before it comes in.
Because a big part of this is a recommendation from the Director of Utilities. But the decision is the mayor and council's.
And it is case by case. Does not give staff blanket authority to do
Absolutely
anything.
not,
Okay.
no.
And rates for this would be independently determined, or would they be lumped into the?
It would be within our rate structure that we
Within
have.
the
There would be no extra rate added in regard to that.
But it'd be outside rate.
city.
Yeah, it'd be outside city.
rates, yes.
Since it's a case-by-case basis, I mean, seems.
Yeah, this is just
Yeah.
the beginning of the process. They'll have to come back with all the information that's been requested. I can get it to you ahead of time, what they're looking at out there. You know, if it were 15 EDUs, I would be surprised. I would just be surprised.
For this particular item, which is exemption number 10.
Right.
Which is, at some point, you have so many exemptions that I'm not sure what the policy means, but.
We've had that discussion.
I propose priorities as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good with that.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes.
All right, follow-up on hotel licensing discussion.
You had your public meeting on October 23rd, so we're back to follow up, see where you'd like to go from here. In the memo, I summarized sort of the common points we were hearing from all the folks who participated in that meeting or who sent you information ahead of time. And as staff kicked it around, we felt like there were kind of three, and maybe there's more, we thought maybe there was three options for you to consider. Either to do a hotel licensing policy tweaked quite a bit, get rid of the tiers, get rid of the fees, you know, do whatever change you want to make, or not do that, amend the building code to provide definitions for the minimum requirements for extended stay hotel rooms, or don't do anything at all, just maintain the status quo.
I like both. I like both 1 and 2.
I say no fees. I like 2. I don't like 1, and I don't like 3.
1's still an inspection, right? Yeah,
I thought one says scrap the fees.
1 is no fees.
right.
No
You know, 1
fees.
scraps the fees, the tiers, all
Right.
the extra stuff, and just says, look, everybody's gonna be inspected once a year.
Which is what we do now.
This would say with
On
the
the fire
addition of
side.
planning and code administration, currently it's just fire.
I like 2, number 2. Amend the building code and property maintenance code.
So, but that's only focusing on hotels that are accommodating extended stay guests.
Correct.
So, you basically, with number 2, you do nothing for a standard hotel, other than the current fire inspection.
And the current building code requirements for hotels. It just currently doesn't make a differentiation between someone staying there a couple of days and someone staying there 3 months. And the hotels that are built specifically for extended stay have a great deal more amenities provided because they, you know, you're in there longer. You're gonna need more in the way of a kitchen, more
Yeah.
space.
How come just curiosity, if we're talking about number 2, how come a dishwasher is added and not a stove for extended stay?
Some of the extended stay chains have a stove, some of them use just a microwave. So we're trying to cover all the bases for extended stay, such as what we're
But
experiencing.
all of them have dishwashers?
It seems to be the case, for the ones that are built for this.
I don't think that solves
How
the
does,
fire safety issue.
yeah, how does that help us with you know, when we have a hotel where you've got 10 people in the room with hot plates on the
Doing regular cooking.
top.
We certainly would not support hot plates or anything equivalent to hot plates. I think there was some conversation about, is there a difference between a coffee maker that is essentially a hot plate, but a single purpose? You wouldn't cook on a coffee maker or a currying machine or whatever the state of the art is. But some of the things we've seen locally in terms of hot plates in restrooms, we wouldn't support that. I have never encountered an extended stay hotel that had a dishwasher without a range. But
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like Ocean City when you go for like
Yeah.
a week or 2 weeks. I mean, ones that have dishwashers and don't, like every kitchen, that's a sort of basic appliance.
The website for the extended stay hotel that's currently under construction indicated that in that brand, they have a microwave instead of a stove. But I don't know if that's
I'm just curious as to why.
as to why they made
Yeah,
that
like
decision.
what, yeah,
Because you go out to eat and you bring home your little doggy bag and you use the microwave to heat it up with on the next night's meal.
Or at the lobby store, they sell frozen meals and take it in.
Convenient.
Mr. Mayor, can we have a 2-minute rebuttal time on this?
please.
Well, what?
A rebuttal time?
No, we're not doing that tonight, no.
Okay.
I'm okay with 3, Mayor, but I think I'm probably the only one that is.
You're okay with 3, Lou?
Yep.
I'm also okay with 3, so
2,
2
I
or
just
3.
need 1 more.
To do nothing?
Yeah. I mean, you already get a yearly fire inspection.
Get a fire inspection and, I don't really, I don't really see what we're buying with 2, so. I'm good with 3.
There you go, John. Yep.
There you go. Jill? Maryland State Arts Council, Grants Organization.
Thank you. Kitty Clark sends her apologies. She had a family personal commitment this evening. So we have a deadline this week to apply for the Maryland State Arts Council Grants for Organization. This would be for fiscal year 20. And following this work session item, there's a special session to vote on this item in order for us to submit the grant application by the deadline. The grant requires a 3-to-1 match, which we estimate at $45,000. And we would put that in the FY20 budget during the budget process. A little bit of background on this grant is we've received it for many years. And the FY19 award is in the amount of just over $13,000. The Arts Council will allow us to use this grant funding in FY19 for the reconfigured event programming. And then what we're looking for tonight is approval to apply for FY20 grant. And I'd be happy to answer any questions before you go into special session.
I don't have any.
Nope.
Nope. All right.
Thank you.
I need to get a motion to go into the 56th special session, please.
So moved.
Second.
Austin and then Shirley. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's 5-0. Approval of grant application to Maryland State Arts Council.
Mr. Mayor, I hereby move to authorize the city to submit a grant application for an MSAG-GFO grant to the Maryland State Arts Council. This grant requires a 3-to-1 match. The match would be included in the public functions line items in the FY20 DCED budget. The grant will be used to cover the cost of presenting artists in the 2020 Signature Music and Arts Festival.
Second.
Question? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. City Administrator's comments, please.
Nothing additional, Mr. Mayor?
Lou, we're gonna start with you tonight.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Austin?
I'm good.
Kristen?
I'm good.
Shelley?
You guys, most of you know that I've been working on the Youth Advisory Council, trying to get that together, and I would like to request to be put on the agenda for a formal presentation to mayor and council to move forward. Please.
All right, we'll get that on.
I don't know, you need two other people to say yes to it.
No, wait, hold on.
Sometime in December or January, where you want it?
December would be great, please.
We'll figure it out.
Just not the Tuesday after the 8th, because I'm not here. Yes, thank you.
Oh, wait, you want to put on in December, then you want to dictate
No, I just
when
want it not
put
to
on?
be, yeah.
It has to be on the fourth.
So there's only one?
There's only,
one
yep,
date.
just
So
one
it'll be
date.
December 4th.
Okay, December 4th, I'll take it.
There
Is
you
that
go.
right?
Done.
Is that right?
Okay,
December 4th.
got it. Thank you. Nope.
All right,
I was convinced
otherwise.
otherwise.
we, very nice Veterans Day, program down at the courthouse again this year on Sunday. And thanks to all who could attend. Friday night, coming up, don't forget, Christmas tree lighting downtown. Santa Claus arrives at 5:30, I think,
This Friday.
this Friday.
Try and make it a white, lighting night.
Yeah. So, yep, on the square, festivities were 5 to 8, or the times, so I think Santa Claus arrives at 5:30. So, what's that look for?
I don't know.
Cause snow and cold and
Maybe.
stuff? Yeah,
Yes.
it's Christmas time.
I hope it snows.
It was rather impressive watching city staff put that Christmas tree up, by the way. You know, it's, a little bit more difficult than putting one up in your house.
It is, it is.
That
We're gonna have
crane
red bows on it yet
thing,
still too,
bucket
so
thing.
it's pretty cool, so. All right, that's it, we're adjourned, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Oh, where's the bathroom?
Down the hall.
Here, I'll pause it.